Real estate versus Bitcoin. What are some of their strengths and weaknesses? What risk factors should you be aware of? Is there place for both in your portfolio? And how can you make money? In this video, we look at 8 key points to compare the two asset classes and help you make an informed decision. Let's get into the video.
Real estate is one of the few assets an investor can buy without using much of their own money, and in some cases with no money down at all. This allows an investor to use the concept of leverage to quickly build a large investment portfolio, provided they have the necessary skills and discipline to manage the property and debt repayments. Borrowing money to buy real estate, in other words, using financial leverage, enables you to receive a return on a much larger amount of capital than you could otherwise, and this results in a far higher potential return on investment. We speak about this concept in much greater detail in our real estate investing video. We'll put a link down below if you'd like to check it out.
Bitcoin, on the other hand, in most cases requires upfront capital. As with most other assets, a bank will not readily loan you funds to buy Bitcoin, and employing leverage to buy some is heavily discouraged by most smart investors anyway. This means that you do require capital to buy Bitcoin, although you don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. Bitcoin is traded in fractional units by default, divisible into 100 million units or 100 million sats. You can therefore easily buy a tiny fraction of Bitcoin, less than $1's worth if that's what you want. At the time of recording, a single US dollar buys you a little over 4,000 sats. This means anyone can afford a few thousand sats. And because of Bitcoin's impressive performance expectation over a 5-year period, investors don't need to use leverage to get good returns. In fact, whilst using leverage with real estate investment is advantageous, trying to buy Bitcoin with leverage is never a good idea.
The second point to consider is that investment property provides you with an income, whereas Bitcoin does not. So if you are an investor who wants to build a passive stream of monthly income, investment property really shines here. Remember that investments can typically generate money in 2 different ways: through capital growth or through generating income, also called the yield. Asset classes like precious metals or Bitcoin only generate returns through capital growth, neither produce any form of income or yield. And some investors see this as disadvantageous. But here's the thing. If you have an investment producing 100% return on average each year with 0 yield, versus an investment producing 30% return each year with a 5 to 10% yield, which would you choose? So whilst yield is an important factor and it's obviously nice to have, an outsized potential for capital growth may be the overriding factor for many investors. And when it comes to growth, Bitcoin has produced some of the best returns in modern history.
Investment property can require a fairly high degree of management on the part of the investor. Although you can hire a property manager to assist you with tenants and maintenance, it is advisable that you still play an active role in the administration of your investment. Whether it's responding to queries from your property manager on occasion, authorizing emergency repairs, or preparing your finances for a tax submission once or twice a year, an investor does play a fairly active role in the administration of their property portfolio as compared to many other asset classes. As professional investors, it's imperative to stay in touch with one's investment portfolio. In the case of Bitcoin, after purchasing it and putting it safely into cold storage, an investor's role is completely passive. No repairs and maintenance, no emails, no phone calls, no admin or paperwork. An investor's only role is to safely custody their Bitcoin, exercise patience, and of course, continue to educate themselves. The Bitcoin rabbit hole is deep. There's always more to learn, and those who take education seriously ultimately benefit the most.
Although investment property can be very lucrative over the long term, especially if using leverage correctly, there is often the need to outlay large amounts of capital. For example, sometimes unexpected repairs are necessary, which insurance doesn't cover, or you may need to replace kitchen cupboards every 10 years due to wear and tear. In addition to these big once-off costs, owning an investment property comes with a number of continual running costs. Property taxes, insurance, levies, and utilities are the major ones. In most cases, this isn't really an issue because the rent from your tenant will cover these expenses. But if your property is vacant for a month or two for whatever reason, you have to cover the costs out of your own pocket. On the upside, the running costs are tax deductible, and in some cases can result in recouping payroll taxes. In other words, you might actually get a refund on your tax bill. By contrast, however, Bitcoin has no running costs at all, and there is no potential for unexpected costs at any point down the line. An investor can sleep easy knowing that his Bitcoin investment will never put any unexpected strain on his pocket at some point in the future.
Property is a bricks and mortar investment. It is a physical, tangible asset. Many investors, particularly traditional investors, are more comfortable with the physical investment which they can see and touch. And that is understandable. We ourselves had this inclination for many years. It makes sense that you can exercise more control over something which is right in front of you and that you own in its entirety, rather than an abstract paper asset like stocks, for example. But the truth is, physical assets can have significant downsides too. Owning an investment property in a particular location ties you into that geographic region. And because property can sometimes be difficult to sell quickly, in the short term it is possible to become locked into your investment with few options when conditions turn against you. That is why professional real estate investors carefully consider these factors before making an investment decision. But consider this: if your local government passes an unjust law or excessive property tax increase, it could be a difficult and costly exercise to sell the property and buy somewhere else. Or if the location deteriorates quickly due to economic factors, for example, you may struggle to sell, thus being locked into the investment with few options. Having said that, residential real estate is satisfying a basic need in the market. Everybody needs a roof over their head, and so as long as you plan carefully with these risks in mind, there are still good investment opportunities to be found.
Bitcoin is largely immune from these sorts of issues. Because it is digital, it is extremely portable. You can carry it in your pocket with you wherever you go. Bitcoin is not tied to any geographic location. It does not acknowledge any regulations or policies implemented by bureaucrats. No one can stop you from owning it, sending it, or receiving it. And because the market for Bitcoin is very large and liquid, you can sell it pretty much instantly at any time, day or night. That said, our stance is that buying Bitcoin is a permanent conversion of your wealth into a superior monetary asset. It's a one-way upgrade of your money in the same way that we now all use email to communicate, rather than sending letters.
Some may consider property investment to have a reasonably high barrier to entry, especially for the average individual. Not everyone can afford the type of commitment that real estate requires. Perhaps you don't have enough capital to cover a down payment yet. Maybe you don't earn enough yet to qualify for a home loan, or perhaps your credit record isn't good enough for whatever reason to get finance from your bank. Investing in real estate, while potentially lucrative, is not cheap, and if we're truly honest about the state of things, most people in the world today will never be financially secure enough to own their own home, let alone an investment property. While this is unfortunate, it does highlight the high demand for quality, affordable real estate by people seeking to rent. There's a lot of satisfaction in fulfilling a basic human need by providing a quality service to your tenants. Now, this is an area where Bitcoin really shines. Bitcoin doesn't care how much you earn or if you have a bad credit record. You can buy a tiny fraction of a Bitcoin right now. If you can only afford a single dollar's worth, no problem.
And this makes Bitcoin accessible to nearly everyone, where property investment is only available to a select group of individuals who are privileged enough to earn a stable income and have access to bank credit. Investing in Bitcoin is possible for even the poorest member of society. And by our book, this is a truly beautiful thing. Everyone, no matter how rich or poor, should have the ability to invest for their future. And for the first time in human history, Bitcoin affords us all this opportunity.
Buying a property is a big commitment. It requires careful research and thorough due diligence on the part of the investor prior to the purchase. Every property is different, every location is different, and because of that, buying a property should never be a quick decision. Because of the number of different variables involved with real estate, it can add complexity to the investment process. And again, each step of the process requires time to look for a suitable property, time to evaluate and perform due diligence, time to negotiate with a seller and procure a mortgage from the bank, and then more time spent waiting for the change of ownership process once the deal is concluded. Property investing is an involved process, And so even if you're ready to invest today, there can be a lead time of 2 to 3 months before you actually own the investment and start reaping the rewards. Bitcoin isn't affected by any of those things. All you need to buy Bitcoin is a cell phone and internet connection. You can buy as little or as much Bitcoin as you want, 24 hours a day with zero restrictions or red tape from the comfort of your couch. You can buy some right now without any negotiation, delays, or lengthy waiting times. And this means you can put your capital to work sooner, more efficiently, and with greater ease.
Buying a property is generally not cheap. Although there are cases where banks will extend credit for property purchase costs, this is not the norm in our experience. This means that even if you're able to secure a mortgage bond for the full value of your real estate investment, you will in most cases need to have saved a sizable amount of savings to cover the purchase costs. This of course means that there may be a delay in investing until you've accumulated enough capital, which could take quite some time depending on your ability to save. Naturally, the real estate market is not waiting around for you to save for purchase costs. The price of property is changing, and in many cases, as you would expect, it's getting more expensive, meaning you could be missing out on the returns you could have had because you weren't immediately ready to buy. But where there is a will, there is a way. We know of many investors who found creative ways of financing the purchase costs, allowing them to invest immediately and take advantage of lucrative investment deals. It comes down to your financial education and your willingness to be creative.
With Bitcoin, however, this isn't an issue. As we've already mentioned, you can convert any amount of dollars into Bitcoin. $100, $10, even $1, and the fees to purchase it are extremely low. Expect around 1 to 2% fee on average, but fees do vary depending on where you purchase from and what method you use. Buying with a credit card, for example, will be more expensive than doing a direct deposit to a Bitcoin exchange. It is possible, however, to buy Bitcoin at a zero fee on some exchanges. We'll explain more on exactly how this works in an upcoming video. For now, here are a few reputable Bitcoin exchanges that you can look into based on the country you're living in. And always remember, buying Bitcoin is a two-step process. The first step is making the purchase. The second step is taking custody of your Bitcoin. There are many ways to do this, but for small amounts of money, simply download an app like Moon or Blue Wallet from the App Store and follow the on-screen prompts.
Thanks so much for watching. If you received some value from this video, please consider supporting us by giving us a like and sharing this video with a friend. We have loads more Bitcoin related content coming out soon, so subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more. Thanks a lot and see you in the next video.